Hello everyone, I'm Lucy Fanger, CEO of On Technology Partners, and I'm proud to be sponsoring our new program, Women STaRs. In each episode, we will spotlight an amazing woman and the struggles and triumphs that she has faced. Then we will reflect and share her insights. Our goal is to engage, entertain, and explore the women STaRs in our world today. I hope you enjoy.
I want to thank all of you for listening today. My name is Shanti Harkness, and I'm the Media Manager for On Technology Partners, a woman-owned company addressing cybersecurity and risk. As a woman-owned business for 30 years, we wanted to share the stories of women and the struggles, triumphs, and reflections they face. This is why we started Women STaRs. Today, we'll be talking with Kirsten Parker. Kirsten, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
So before we begin, just a little icebreaker question. Why don't you tell us something that others may not know or something exciting about yourself?
I love this question. I think I decided the funnest thing about me is my family's Halloween tradition. So the most exciting, fun thing I can share is Halloween for us is like Christmas. So my dad grows 400 to 700 pound pumpkins in the backyard. Family comes in from out of state. Before he retired, he would always take 2 weeks off work. It's like a big production.
Wow.
And it's just the most fun, weird thing to feel like it's very special because the rest of the world kind of just thinks it's like a one-day event. And for us, it's everything that Christmas means or the holiday season means, like family and tradition. And for me, it's baking. I bake like hundreds of things over the course of the week, including usually a haunted gingerbread mansion.
Ooh.
And it's just... I think it's so fun because I grew up with that. So it's like, it's always been very normal to me. And then people who meet me are like, you do what? Halloween? What's something? So if you ever get the chance to come to Sierra Madre, California at Halloween after the pandemic, we'll be waiting.
Good to know.
Yeah.
and the gardener in me has to ask, how on earth do you grow 400 to 700 pound pumpkins?
It's all about the seed. So
Really?
He has specific breeds that he keeps the seeds from every year, and then he replants, and it's not the most ideal climate for pumpkins, I got to tell you, because it gets like 105 degrees there in the summer,
Yeah.
But he does it. The biggest one this year, I think, was like 690.
Wow.
I know, it's so fun.
That's a lot of pie.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't make the yummiest food, but it is fun to watch them carve because my dad makes like structures out of them. So he'll make like a working fountain or like a dragon snake thing that like on a metal structure that goes up from the roof down to the lawn. And my uncle will carve with like clay carving tools and make these like really intricate faces. And then I watch Halloween Wars and I'm like, oh, that's cute. Mine is better.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
yeah, happy, most wonderful time of the year, whatever time of year it is right now.
That's excellent. So talk to us a little bit about what you do, where you work, what it's like, and how long you've been doing it.
I work in my computer, like much of the world right now. I am a mindset and action coach. So I work with people who want to make their lives meet their expectations. Kind of what it all boils down to. So I work with men and women. I work with people of all ages from their 20s to their 60s, and they want different things. I have people who want to make more money, who want to do more purposeful work, who just want to feel more confident and self-accepting. But what they share in common is that for as hard as they're working and for as capable and accomplished as they are, there's still something in the way of them doing what they say they want to do and thinking of themselves in the way they want to think of themselves. So that's what I help with. We find out what's happening, what bad habits have you accumulated over the course of your life in how you think about yourself and then how you operate in your life, and then how can we change those? And it's really about helping people shift into this mode where they don't feel like they're constantly falling short of their own expectations, because that's an incredibly crappy way to live and it's not necessary. So that's what I help with. Excellent. And to answer how it is, it's super fun. It's my most fun, favorite job I've ever had.
Excellent.
I make it fun because otherwise it's like too heavy and too much work. So
and how long did you say you've been doing that?
We're going into year 3 of this.
Year 3. Okay.
Yeah. It's been a ride.
So how how did you decide what you wanted to do with your life? Is this the kind of thing that you've always seen yourself doing, or is this new?
Even a little bit? No. I was on a pretty different path. I was a theater stage manager for over 10 years. I got a master's degree from Yale in theater stage management. I was working at the top theater company in LA. I had that career like pretty dialed in. I just found myself in this position that I was describing lots of my clients do. I just wasn't making the money that I wanted. I didn't feel as purposeful in what I wanted or what I was doing. I also didn't, I had this image of my life and how it would look and how I would feel about myself. And I had no idea how I thought that was going to happen. So that's where I find I meet people a lot, because you can be in the middle of a lot of success, whatever that looks like to you, or, a lot of thriving relationships, but really feel like I don't feel as excited about my future as I should. And I don't have any idea how to fix that. So I got coaching, because therapy was not answering my questions, because that is not what therapy exists for, as I found out a little late. And then coaching just changed everything for me. And it helped me answer all my questions that I just described. Answer, like, what do I really want to do? How can I be excited about my future and feel like I actually have a plan to create it? And that was so freeing. And I learned so much about just how we get in our own ways. That was bonkers to me that I was learning in my early 30s and not like just was common knowledge. So I decided, other people need to feel this freedom, and I'm going to help them do that for the rest of their lives. Yale master's and other decades-long career complete. It's pretty wild.
Fun ride.
Yeah.
So we know that triumphs don't come without struggles, right? So what have been some of your biggest struggles? These can be either professionally or personally. And how were you able to get through those struggles? And how did they affect you, or what kind of impact did they have on your life and career?
I love this question, because triumphs require struggles. I think that that's one of the basic things that we don't learn. So every time we encounter a struggle, we're like, something's gone wrong. So yes, normalize the struggle. I think some of my biggest struggles have come from not feeling like I have any say in my emotions. I've always felt really disconnected from what my brain is doing and what my emotions are doing. Partially, I think that comes from I was misdiagnosed as bipolar when I was 20. So for over a decade, I just walked around the world kind of feeling like I had this convenient excuse to not understand my emotions, because I was like, a doctor said they don't make any sense. That's okay. And what that did was it just it cut me off from ever inquiring into what was happening. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? Those are questions I never ever asked. And I didn't really feel like there was a point in it, because I had this very handy excuse. And I think that it got in the way of me really feeling like I had ownership over myself. I just felt like I was wrong for the way that I was and how reactive I was, and how my mind would catastrophize and snowball and create anxiety. And I was just so this is the way I have to live? Really? I don't have to say any of this? And I think I hear that from a lot of people, diagnoses or not. It's we think our brains are doing all this stuff that we have to live with. And it gets in our ways, personally, professionally, all the ways, because we feel like we're constantly in struggle with ourselves. And so that slowed me down a lot in just knowing who I really was and what I really wanted, what I really thought. When I decided what I want to think, rather than letting my brain come up with whatever its own ideas about what it wanted to think, which are largely habit, which I didn't know. So that's one of the biggest struggles I've done the most work to overcome, just managing my mindset and regulating my emotions and realizing I have the capability of doing that. And if I was bipolar, I would have that capability. Or if something else was diagnosable and prescribable for me, it's we have so much more power than we give ourselves credit for. It's a struggle when you don't know.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
It took me years to learn that I'm in control of my emotions. It's not the other way around. Like, I have control. And so one of the best things that I learned is something called the arc. And that's where understandings dictate our feelings, always. So if we want to change how we feel, we have to change the understandings that we're reaching for. And once we do that, everything else changes. Everything, and you can halt, certain emotions and thoughts and feelings in the moment. You don't have to indulge them. As I personally have a very, very, very long background with struggling with severe depression and anxiety. And I spent almost my entire life with a victim mentality. Like, everything was always happening to me. I was the victim.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. But when I learned to take responsibility for my life and learned that I'm responsible for all of my situations and circumstances by the choices and the actions that I make, that gives you so much more power and so much more control over where you let your mind go and what you allow it to think on and what understandings you allow it to latch onto. And if you don't like those, change them. It's not something that's set in stone. If you don't like how you're feeling, you can change it. Just change your understandings. And it took me a while to be able to learn that and to be able to consistently apply that. But now I know, if I'm getting distracted by something and then all of a sudden I'm feeling very overwhelmed or distraught or anxious, that I can stop that right in the moment. And it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I think that's so relatable, because it's that responsibility that we can take it's not usually taught to us, at least when we were growing up, right? Like our education wasn't highlighting thought awareness or emotion regulation. We didn't have this knowledge like very readily accessible. I mean, at least I didn't. I can't speak for everyone, but
I didn't either.
It's the victim mentality is very attractive and accessible. And I live there too, for sure. And that responsibility can be a little scary, because it's like, wait, I'm feeling this way and it's terrible, and I'm the one who has to change it. What? But it's exactly what you said. With embracing that responsibility, you get all of the power back that you've been giving away to everything you've been delegating your feelings to. It's just a game changer. But it's like that. I love that you shared that you did work on it over several years, because like me too. We have a lifetime of practice. This is what I tell my clients all the time. Like, you have a lifetime of practice of being the way that you are right now. So like, of course, you're not going to be able to turn into a different person overnight. That's not how we're designed. But you can certainly do it, and you can do it more quickly, because you're creating this change on purpose, whereas we just kind of ended up this way, not really deliberately. But it's definitely a process, not an event. 100%.
Absolutely. So kind of along these lines, do you have any tips or tricks that you use to get through challenging times?
Yes. So one of my certifications is in stress, anxiety, and energy management from the HeartMath Institute. And I love science-based tools and research-backed practices. I love understanding what's happening when we think a thought, or when we believe a thought, or when we create an emotion for ourselves. And anxiety is something that we, just exactly as you said, we can feel like that's happening to us all the time. And it sucks. It's like an incredibly frustrating place to return to over and over again. So the biggest tip, trick, practice, whatever I can share, is something that is from the HeartMath Institute, which is called heart-focused breathing. And essentially, if you just breathe more, if everyone just breathes more, it will feel better. We will all feel better.
Oh yeah, because we breathe shallow when we're anxious.
Exactly. Especially if we focus on the exhale and activate our parasympathetic nervous system. If you exhale a little bit longer than your inhale, you will send signals to your body that you're not in danger. You don't need stress to survive in that moment. Such a game changer. And if you want to take it a step further, you can do this practice of heart-focused breathing, which is literally just slowing your breathing down a little bit and calming the mind drama that is your brain is wanting to like run away with some stories or some judgments or some fears, like just putting pause on that for a second and drawing your attention to your heart, like the muscle keeping you alive. If you do that just for like 30 seconds, you will change your biophysiological experience. You will send different information from your heart to your brain, because our hearts have their own nervous system, and our brain takes a lot of information from the heart. So it's this fascinating tiny little trick that doesn't require a lot of mechanics, because all you have to do is breathe and think about your heart instead of like whatever nonsense is stressing you out, just for 30 seconds. You can go back to the nonsense, but sometimes we need something to occupy our minds with so that we can take a break from the nonsense. And I find this one a really, really delicious thing to do to calm anxiety and get into that parasympathetic state.
I absolutely agree. And I love practicing different breathing exercises for that same purpose, to calm my restless mind and to decrease my stress and anxiety levels, and to just clear my mind and just get me into a space where I can think calmly and clearly and respond rather than react.
Yeah. Because it's just about giving yourself a break, right? Like our brains will go back to the stress and the nonsense. You can change those habits over time, so it's less prone to do that or less catastrophizing when it does that. But I like telling people it's kind of like if you think about your cell phone, and if you just use it all day long, by the end of the day, it'll be at like 2%. It won't, half of its functions will have shut down. It won't be working properly, and it will take a lot longer to get back to 100%. So I think of these like breathing exercises that you were talking about as just like tiny little moments in your day when you plug in your phone. So maybe by the end of the day, you're still at like 60, maybe you're still a little depleted, but you're not so depleted that you're half functioning, and then you need like an entire week to recover. So if we can give ourselves these breaks of just like breathing and taking a break from the brain drama, it will make such a huge difference over time, very quickly too.
Yeah, like you said, even just taking 30 seconds.
Yeah.
30 seconds, you can change your entire outlook for the day.
Yeah, so good. Oh, stitch that on a pillow.
I love it. So let's take a moment and focus on your biggest triumph. Can you share what that was and what made it such a great triumph for you?
Yeah, I'll make it a short and sweet story, but I found my answer when I read this question. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I'm going to talk about a breakup. Okay, let's do it. But I think honestly, what comes to me when I think about the biggest triumph of late is ending a relationship last year. And it was with someone who we dated like 8 or 9 years ago. We had a super strong connection, and then the timing wasn't right. But he was always like my epic ex, that one. It's like you have more relationships, and they're of varying meaning, but there's always like that one. And we actually ended up getting back together last year. And I had done all this work on myself. I had started this business. I had become more self-aware and confident and clear and managing my emotions and mindset and all of the wonderful things that it's kind of like everybody's dream, right? Like you get to like leave a relationship and then do all this amazing work on yourself and become this better version of yourself. And then you get to show that off to like the one who got away. You're like, look how amazing I am. And then I left. The thing about this like better version of myself that I turned into was I was very clear on what I wanted and what I deserved and what I was willing to do for myself and my own happiness. And I had built up such an incredible amount of self-trust that I was able to say all that out loud. I was like, this is what I want. This is what I'm going for. And he didn't want the same things. And I was like, all right, I'm willing to feel all of the emotions that are going to come from walking away from this relationship. And I'm willing to believe I can survive those emotions. I'm willing to believe that what I really want is out there, which it is. It's like in the other room now because I'm in a new relationship that I created. And it's just, I think it's kind of like a funny story and may not seem like that huge of a triumph, but it simply would have been impossible for me to do that before in my old relationship with myself. I wouldn't have been able to just have a clear conversation about like my priorities, values, and goals, and trust myself to take care of myself through like that powerful decision. And I think that that's like something that keeps us so stuck in whatever relationships, jobs, lifestyles, that we are not meeting our expectations. We feel like we're letting ourselves down a little bit, but we're so scared of what's going to happen if we like walk away from this kind of disappointing but very familiar thing. And so that was a really, really big triumph for me. And I survived.
That's an excellent triumph. And I can absolutely relate to that one. That was, probably one of my big triumphs in life also, was ending a relationship that was not good.
Yeah, not aligned, as we say in the biz.
And, when you've got different priorities and different goals out of life and they don't match up, like it's just going to create disharmony and disappointment or resentment and, really just settling for something less. And we struggle enough as it is. We don't need to be settling for less when, there's so much more.
Yeah. And I think that ability to really listen to yourself and hear your own, because we know what we want. I have people come to me all day long. They're like, I just don't know what I want. And I'm like, you're just not in communication with yourself in a way that lets you hear it. And that's fine. We think we're wrong about everything. We can't trust ourselves. We think we're crazy for wanting what we want. And it's like, okay, well, if we just shelve all of that for a second, it is very clear what we need to do here to take care of ourselves and our ambitions and our dreams. It's just that leap is not one that comes naturally to a lot of people, which is fine. It's just like why my job exists. To help.
Good for business.
Yeah. I mean, we got to be able to walk away from the things that are not aligned for us so that we can like focus on what we want to walk towards. And it's not always about like blowing your life up, like leaving a relationship or leaving an entire career behind. Like I did those things, but that's because I had settled so far into a life that was not aligned for me. So sometimes it's just a little shift, changing the understandings that you walk around with, like you said, so that you can walk around your life feeling an entirely different way. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's just that's still work, unfortunately.
And change can be scary, but change is also exciting.
Yeah, very scary.
Brings lots of new opportunities.
Yeah, both.
So as women, we struggle with a wide multitude of different things. We've got career, family, household responsibilities, sometimes illnesses or caregiving. How do you maintain a work-life balance, and how do you find the support that you need to address those things?
This actually came up on a recent training that I did that everyone, I didn't even think of plugging this, but you can go to my Facebook group, KP Coaching, and do this training for free. But I think the biggest thing that is resonating with me and with people struggling with this question, how do I balance everything, is distinguishing values from priorities. I feel like we get ourselves super tripped up in what we want to commit our resources to, our resources being time, attention, energy, sometimes money, and making that a problem if it doesn't look like it highlights our values enough. And I think we just get to have both. I think knowing what your values are, I always say core values change like seasonally. Like you can have 3, 5, 7 core things that are really important to you right now that you want to infuse your life with and align your life with. That can be lovely things like family and love and growth. And those get to be separate than your priorities of the moment. So when I work with people, and I do this with myself too, I get really specific on what is the top priority, the second top, and the third priority for what time frame. And that, I think that distinction opens up a lot more space. So you get to have your value of family, love, peace, whatever, but also you get to decide, okay, for this next 3 weeks, like for me, the next 4 weeks, we're going into a holiday season right now. in real time. But I've decided very deliberately that my number one priority is my business. And I have a specific result in mind of if I honored this priority, I would create this result. So that lets me have both, right? It lets me have my value of family and love, but also like I get to do my priority in the way that I want to. Does that make sense?
It does. You're setting measurable goals that stay in alignment with, what's important to you.
Yeah. And I think that it's we can get in our own ways by making ourselves wrong or believing that we need to feel guilty or believing that we feel like we need to feel like we're not doing enough in some arena. And I think that attitude rarely serves us. It rarely gets us anything. So why not just decide for this very specific time frame, this is what I want to give to this, and this is what I want to give to this. And this is what I want to come of those efforts. That I think, so that's been a really big game changer in my life and for my clients. And then also this idea that like the verb balancing might serve us a lot more than the noun balance. I think if we set the expectation for ourselves that we'll constantly be balancing, it's just a much more forgiving way of life than thinking we need to achieve balance and stay there. And it's bad if we deviate from that state. Like, well,
because sometimes we're balancing on one foot.
It just seems a lot harder. Yes. It's like, well, maybe there's someone out there who's like found balance and never left there. But that also sounds pretty boring. So I would rather just like accept that life is like up and down, 50-50. There's so much out of our control and there's so much in our control. So if we're just on board with the idea that I'm signing up for the balancing of it, that lets you also decide like, okay, right now I'm just going to walk around on one foot for like a couple weeks. And like, that's fine.
Yeah. And I like what you mentioned about, some things aren't in our control, but there's a lot of things that are in our control. And I think it's also important to remember that there's a lot more in our control than we realize.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah. And so often that just comes down to deciding what you want to care about. Like half the work I do with people is untraining their brains to care more about what other people think of their version of balance. It's like, what do you want your life to look and feel like? And let's unprogram all of this BS about like what it should look like and what makes you a good mom or what makes you a successful business person. Let's get rid of everyone else's opinions in your brain and then let you define, just like one of your questions, what success is for you. What, like, do we even want balance? Like, who decided that we need to feel balanced all the time? You get to decide that's what you want. But I think buying into all of the standards that we're just handed cuts us off from a lot of our own power and what's in our control from the get-go.
And that was perfect timing that you made that comment, because our next question is, how do you define success for yourself? And do you have any tips or habits that help you to be successful that you can share?
For me, my lifelong struggle up until a few years ago was always like walking around with the belief that I'm not there yet. Everyone has their version of that. I think I'm not good enough. I didn't do it right. For me, it was like, I'm not there yet. And so that really informs my definition of success now, which is letting myself have the present and the future, giving myself full access to happiness in the present moment and intentionally growing towards my potential. I think for success for me has to involve both, because believing that I'll be able to be happier later when I do this or when I feel this or when I get that, there's no upside. So at removing all of the conditions that I can on my own ability to just be happy right now, it seems counterintuitive because people get scared when they're like, well, if I'm happy now, then when am I going to have any motivation to grow and progress? It's just the total opposite. If you remove all the conditions you can on your happiness in the present moment, it's like you have so much more energy freed up to create whatever you want, because then the future is like a giant cherry on top of your life. It's like, oh, well, if my happiness, and for me it's happiness, but like whatever, if your self-acceptance or self-love or sense of fulfillment, if that isn't conditional on you getting your future right, then like, what magic can I create? Oh, this is going to be so much fun. So that's my tip. That's my tip, is noticing this very, very subtle unconscious thing that we do, which is make your happiness conditional on things. What are you saying is in the way, keeping you from being as happy as you can be, and letting that be different than like, oh, I have all these like aspirations that I'm moving towards. I'm seeing my growth potential. Like, that gets to be different, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And I think oftentimes it's easy for us to confuse happiness with satisfaction. So when we reach certain goals or expectations or milestones, we're actually satisfied that we've met those. Happiness can't be conditional on anything, because if it was conditional on anything, then it wouldn't be true happiness. So we're confusing happiness for satisfaction, and, really understanding that difference brings joy to your life. And when you're happy unconditionally, not dependent on any person, place, or thing, or outcome, or circumstance, that is so freeing and so liberating and so joyful that you become inspired, just immensely inspired for what to do next. It's so good. Amazing.
So good, because when it's just like you were saying, when you're making it conditional, it's like all of your efforts are trying to compensate for a deficit. It's like, I'm underwater and I have to get to a place where I'm as happy as I think I should be, or I want to be. And you can hold happiness and dissatisfaction in both hands. Like, I love that phrasing of yours, where it's like, I'm happy right now. I'm also like dissatisfied with this result I've created, which is exciting because that means I get to like find a solution to this problem. But I think the difference is, with satisfaction, you're just deciding, okay, well, what do I want to go after? What do I want to create? And with the happiness or the fulfillment or the self-acceptance, we're complicating things by making it mean something about ourselves, which is just unnecessary. Like, you can have your total happiness and self-acceptance and self-belief and all that deliciousness, and look at like, okay, I want to increase my income, or I want to create a thriving relationship. Nothing is wrong with me because I don't have those things yet, and I can be fully happy on my way to creating them. Like, let's go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Kirsten, what would be the best advice that you've ever received?
There is no wrong decision. 85% of my anxiety in my past was because I was having decision drama. I didn't trust myself, and I was convinced, because I was making my happiness so conditional on making the right choice and believing that if I made the wrong choice, everything was going to catch on fire and I would never be able to return or recover. And it just kept me stuck for so long. And my very first coach, I got so mad at her because I was like, obviously, yes, there is a right and wrong decision. What are you talking about? And I was like stuck in all the places. I didn't know if I should quit my job or not. I didn't know if I should like leave my relationship or not. And she was like, what if there's no wrong choice? What if there's just the choice you make? And then the next choice you make after that. And then the next one you after that. So I want to encourage, if anyone listening is very challenged by that idea, I'm like, I'm with you. I was very mad at her. Just unfortunately, she was also right. Because it doesn't, like, our brains will want to argue, like, yes, of course there is a right thing you can do and a wrong thing you would do. And like, yes, our brains will want to argue that. But if you look at what the belief is underneath believing that, it's, okay, well, if I believe there's a wrong choice, then I believe that my happiness is conditional, that it can go away, that I can never get it back. And that I can't find any upside to thinking that.
Mm-hmm. It's the right choice right now for, wherever you're at in life or your circumstances, whatever choice you make, it's the right choice for you at that time. And, you can make another choice in the next moment. You don't have to stay stuck. You can always make another choice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really sneaky tactic. I think our brain's just designed to keep us safe, because as long as we're not actually making any decisions, we're not taking any risks. So as long as we believe it's important for me to stress about this and not make a decision yet, because I don't want to make the wrong one. As long as we're believing that, we're just like kind of keeping ourselves, we're keeping ourselves stuck, but it's also like quite safe. So,
and we don't have to be responsible for it.
Yeah. Which is fine. Lots of people live that way. I've lived that way, but it's also very painful. And so I think the more I can get the message out in the world, like there is an option to believe you can't get it wrong. It's just more opportunities for people to like take their power back. It just feels better.
It's definitely a better way to live. So let's take a moment and reflect on something that you wish you would have known sooner in life.
I wish I had known sooner that we don't have to believe everything that we think. This was a game-changing revelation for me, as I said, in my early 30s. And that felt a little late to find that out. But nothing's gone wrong. I took that learning and I ran with it, but boy, would it have made a difference to just understand a little more of the mechanics of how we operate. Because our brains are efficiency machines. They get good at what they practice. And so many of us, I feel like we grow into these beings that are in charge of these incredibly complex machines that are ourselves, and we have no manual for them. We're just expected to like operate them in the world, and we don't know how they work. And it's like, that's bonkers. So I think that's why I'm really excited. I do some like guest lecturing and things. I don't have a ton of very young clients, but when I get the opportunity to talk to people like in their 20s even, I'm like, okay, if you leave with nothing else, here's an idea that I would love to plant in your brain, which is we get good at what we practice. If you practice thinking something for your whole life, you're not good enough. You can't achieve the things that you want. Certain things are not available to you. Then that will feel really true once you get into your adulthood, because you've practiced it for a long time. So the fact that it feels true doesn't have to be as meaningful as we make it. It's actually just evidence that it's a very strong habit, and habits are changeable.
Absolutely.
So that's my like, that's okay. If I could go back and change anything, maybe I would know that we don't have to take everything our brains give us at face value. It's worth questioning. Is this true? And do I want it to be true?
Excellent advice. Just leads me into my next question is, what advice would you give to a young woman beginning her career?
Oh man, this is a struggle to pick something. But I think what I would have wanted to hear was, let yourself do it your own way. It's kind of akin to like, there's no wrong option, but it's like, there's no right way. There's no, somebody's doing it better, somebody's doing it right, that you need to hold yourself to and follow in that path. Like, I think I was talking to a client yesterday who's moving to Austin, and she's freaked out because her brain is like, everyone from LA is moving to Austin. I'm never going to find an apartment, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, what if the city of Austin only exists so that you can live there? Like, what if we're in a crazy universe where this city only exists on the planet for the sole purpose of you being able to experience it? That could be true. We don't know. You could argue with me, but like, just giving yourself a break from the idea that other people's opinions and preferences are so much more important than your own. It cuts so much of our creativity and our originality off. And I think the more you can just like, as you inch forward in your goals, the more you can think like, how would I do this if I was making it up, not trying to do it the way somebody else is doing it? Like, that could be a super fun idea to just sprinkle on top of your journey along the way.
I love it. Excellent advice.
Thanks.
So Kirsten, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, how would they get in touch with you?
My website is my name. So it's KirstenParker.com, KIRS, as we talked about before we started recording. Some people hear Kristen, some people see Kristen. That's totally fine. It's just going to take you probably to a different website, or you're not going to get any coaching. So KirstenParker.com. My email is coaching@KirstenParker.com. I am happy to schedule hour-long consults where we talk about what is your actual problem? What is your brain telling you is your problem? How are you falling short of your own expectations? How is stress getting in the way of your life? We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about your solution. We'll set you up with a program. And I also do have that free training. I have a lot of free resources on my website. So you can get that free training, which is a 3-day series on how to do what you say you want to do with less stress. And it's a 3-step solution. It's super valuable. We talk about all of this and more. And I think it's really fun. So that's free on the website as well.
Thank you so much. Kirsten, it has been an absolute privilege speaking with you. Thank you again for taking the time for this interview.
Well, thank you. And it'll be a privilege to hear your story too. So I can't wait for that.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So On Technology Partners wants to thank you for joining us on this episode of Women STaRs. If you'd like to nominate a businesswoman to be interviewed for Women STaRs, please email their contact information and your reason for nominating them to stars@ontechpartners.com. My name is Shanti Harkness. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for joining us on today's journey. Remember, you are all women stars. If you wish to learn more about our Women STaRs program or want to be a guest on our show, contact us at stars@ontechpartners.com. And thank you to On Technology Partners for helping me make this program a reality. Remember, we at On Technology Partners want to help you protect your team from hackers. To learn more about our cybersecurity services, go to ontechnologypartners.com.